us now. Only love.
Good evening and welcome to Moving Forward, a production of the Bain Grantstown Advancement Association. On this program, we focused upon identifying obstacles in the path of national development. And with the assistance of our guests and the wider society, we seek to remove or at least reduce these obstacles. This evening, we're going to discuss a topic that is very, very important, particularly at this time in our national development. It's a topic that we do not hear a lot about. And we're talking about service. Service, the action of someone doing work for someone else. That's the general definition of service. Of course, there is paid and unpaid service. Well, we are talking about the unpaid service, which is often referred to as voluntary service. Our nation is at a stage where we need all hands on deck. The adage says, now is the time for all good men, and I'm adding, and good women, to come to the aid of their country. We are desperately in need of service of every variety, and especially voluntary service, because a nation cannot rely only upon its ability to pay for what it gets. We must, as citizens and residents, be prepared to offer our service voluntarily wherever we can. We should look to give back, particularly those of us who have been blessed by having been born in such a beautiful part of the world and having enjoyed the excellent climate, the friendliness of everything we have here in the Bahamas. And it is only our Christian duty to seek to give back. And so we encourage people to locate opportunities that fit your skills and your interests and go for it. Let's volunteer. You know, we are at a point where we've got to forget about how much you're going to pay me and try now to work within our society, whether it's your church, your club, your school, your political organization, your sporting organization. Just give voluntary service and let's move this nation forward. Now, assisting us this evening in exploring this wonderful topic is a person who is uniquely capable and qualified to do that. She is Mrs. CarolineTurnquest, and she is the Director General of the Bahamas Red Cross Society, an organization that relies very, very heavily upon volunteers, because without volunteers, the Red Cross could not really function, could not honor its mandate. And so she is here, and this is very appropriate because we've just had a number of disturbances, weather disturbances, that required the Red Cross to ratchet up their programs, and the need for volunteer is even more critical at this kind of time. So welcome to Moving Forward, Mrs. Turnquest.
Thank you, Reverend Moss.
Well, before we get started, we're going to just ask you to just tell our viewers who may have been under a rock for the past number of years a little about yourself. You've been the Director General since what, 2010?
2010.
Well, just give us a little
January 2010.
A little bit of background about yourself.
Yes, I had a background. I have a background in banking. Been with a Canadian bank for 35 plus years. Mm-hmm. Prior to that, I was a flight attendant, and prior to that, I was a secretary with the Ministry of Finance. Mm-hmm. And so, coming up through the ranks, but from I know myself, I've always been helping, and I think I was brought up in that culture because my mom always helped the neighbors, and we always shared what we had.
Well, that's wonderful to hear. You are very qualified for this position, and you've been in this position now about 7 years.
Yes.
But we're going to look at the international side of Red Cross because surprisingly, a lot of people do not really understand the scope, the importance of Red Cross, the role that it plays in the international community. I think it's perhaps the foremost organization in terms of respect from every strata of every society in the world, particularly in times of war or disaster. And so just for background information, let's talk a little bit about the International Red Cross. And just share with them, it's broken down into.
Yes, the International Federation of Red Cross, which is in charge of what we call the national societies, are currently in 190 countries. And in each country, they are what is termed as an auxiliary to government. They are not an NGO, but rather an auxiliary. So we are like an extended arm of government, but totally independent. We operate on 7 fundamental principles, independence being one of them, impartiality, humanity, unity, etc. Throughout, that's the mandate. That is what we call the movement. There's also the International Committee of Red Cross, dealing with the politics, if you would, of things, dealing directly with governments, working out, especially in war-torn countries where they have to go in and negotiate with governments for civilians, etc. And in any country where there is any type of disturbance, you'll find that the Red Cross movement would be the mediation party.
Yes.
So, you have 2 different opposing, but they would always call in the Red Cross, and hence we do not get involved in politics. We do not side with any. We are simply there to hear and to determine, more or less, to work, the peacemakers, if you would so call them. And so the Red Cross in any country plays a very, very important part, bringing relief to persons. We're there to serve those most vulnerable among us. And I'll bring it home to my country where it comes to serving. We are not there to find out if the person is here legally or illegally.
That's right.
It doesn't matter. If they have a humanitarian need that we can assist with, then, the help is open to that individual as well. And that's why it's critical for us to get on the grounds in places, in the societies where persons, would be living, and to ensure that they get at least a chance to some basic humanitarian services.
Yeah, the International Committee of the Red Cross, that is very important. That goes back to the heart of the movement, because it is based in Switzerland. It was established in Switzerland.
Yes.
The reason being, as most of us know, Switzerland has always been known for its neutrality.
Yes, and that's where the Red Cross movement actually was born,
in
Henry Dunant.
1863, somewhere around there. Now, the International Committee is, as you just said, the group that does the political discussions between governments.
Very, very closely with governments.
And that's very important.
And that's
very important. For example, in the event of wars or conflicts, they negotiate access paths and so forth for the national societies then to proceed.
Yes.
Because they work at a level where they are in touch with all governments all the time. That's a very important body.
And if I may just mention, a few years back, Jamaica had a situation where there was an individual that needed to be extradited to the U.S. And it was such that the people were protecting him. They had riots and they actually had internal conflict. And the only party that was able to negotiate him getting out of there safely and to where they needed him was the Red Cross. So they played, the International Committee of Red Cross, the ICRC, came in, worked with the Red Cross, and they were able to put that situation at rest, and it went off smoothly.
And then you talked about the national societies, and you might add the Arab countries go by different names.
Yes,
so that
we use the Red Cross and they use the Red Crescent. So they don't use the cross or respect the cross. They use the crescent or half moon, as we call it. So when you see the symbol, the emblem of the international, you'll see a cross and a crescent. and we use the cross in this part of the world. For instance, we're very, very closely tied to the Caribbean national societies. We are zoned in what we call the Americas. And so there are 13 national societies within that. And we always, have meetings. We get together sometimes, maybe 6-7 times a year in different various countries. Whether it's Barbados, Belize, Jamaica, but we constantly travel to each other, and we do a lot of information sharing. And the Federation has actually an office set up in Trinidad that is the zone office, and we negotiate with each other through that office.
Well, let us not take lightly the role of the International Red Cross in the world, particularly as we see increasing areas of conflict throughout the world. The Red Cross is vitally important in maintaining some semblance of humanitarian considerations, and at least keeping dialogue open, because when countries trust no other entity, they trust the International Red Cross. And that's very important, because we must recognize their value so that we would appreciate their work. And of course, that flows down to the national societies.
And another area they're working in, you mentioned conflicts, but one of the critical areas currently is the area of migration with the movement of persons. And some of the migration would have stemmed because of conflicts in various countries. And so it all ties together, where you see the movement of people. And here in the Bahamas, we too have a role to play with migration.
Yes, we have a fair degree of migration, but when you look at some countries in the Middle East and other countries where you have millions of people displaced and living under intolerable conditions, then you really realize and appreciate the value of the Red Cross. And I thought I would say that because, well, as perhaps the nation is aware, I served with the Red Cross for a while. And I got to have a personal view and a great appreciation for the organization and what it does. Now, we in the Bahamas may not have been exposed to the real critical need for the Red Cross, So we see the Red Cross. Well, in the hurricane, we bring a little food, little clothes, little soup and whatnot. And that's basically it. But in countries where there is extreme poverty, where there is conflict, where there is wars, where you have, like you said, displaced persons, when they see that Red Cross, it's almost as if they see, and we have to learn to appreciate that, because we do not know when we would reach the point where we would need Red Cross in the same way that those people that we sometimes see on TV do. And that is why we want to strengthen Red Cross.
Yes, because there's so many areas that the Red Cross around the world works in. And eventually you see the same thing moving here. They work in healthcare, they work in gender equality. There's a wide scope of areas that the Red Cross works at. Like I said, we are an auxiliary to the government of the country. And so which area governments have an interest in, you'll find the Red Cross there undergirding them and supporting and strengthening whichever government is, working at the time.
Well, I can see you love talking about the Red Cross, and so do I. And we just want to share this with our viewers and encourage them to really become interested in the work of the Red Cross. We're going to take a quick break here and be right back.
Only love can save us now.